Hello everyone, Sanjay here. So in this video I want to talk a little bit about Sumeru, just some of the backstories of Sumeru. In this video I'm not going into too much detail regarding what is happening with manga. I'll release the video on that tomorrow regarding what my personal speculations are with the current case in Sumeru, which I personally believe is going to be a very interesting one. And of course, with that said, let's get started. So a little bit about the nation of Sumeru itself. It is one of the 7 nations of Teyvat, and the element corresponding to this nation is Dendro. Now of course, currently we have not seen any Dendro character in game. However, personally I believe that Dendro character will come before the release of Sumeru with the release of Chasm, which is the area between Liyue and Sumeru. However, this area is supposed to be the DLC for Liyue, just like the Dragon Spine is the DLC for Mondstadt, and as we have seen no sign of Liyue activity in Dragon Spine, we should see no sign of Sumeru activity in Chasm. However, I believe that because the Chasm will most likely introduce some sort of HP draining mechanism related to Dendro, so I believe at that point they should have the entire Dendro set out at that point. So with that said, moving on to other section of the Sumeru. The location of Sumeru itself, I believe, is going to be west of Liyue. That makes most sense from all the lore we have in game. And as for the climate of Sumeru, we can tell we have gotten one sentence from Liban himself, who says that Sumeru has both rainforests and deserts. Now these two climates don't mix IRL in real life very well. However, my guess is that Sumeru is either going to be of the ancient Egypt setup, so essentially anywhere in ancient Egypt's case, anywhere alongside the Nile River has small to big settlements and is also very fertile, but as you walk further inland, the soil starts to turn into sand and then it starts to gradually turn into desert. So that is one idea on how potentially that could go. Another idea is that there might just be 2 separate climates that just works very well, like how Mondstadt and Dragon Spine are 2 different climates, but they're both Mondstadt. Like that could also happen. So both ways it could happen. Moving on to the Dendroarcon. Currently we know 2 big pieces of information about him. The first one is that he is only 500 years ago. This one is confirmed by Ganyu herself during the 1.1 Archon quest. The second piece of information we know is that he is the Archon of Wisdom, and yes, it is a he. This is already confirmed, but he will be the last male Archon to show up after Barbados and Morax. All the rest of the 4 Archons, the Hydro, the Pyro, all the rest of the 3 Archons, the Pyro, the Hydro, and the Cryo, will be female Archons. So with that said, a few more things regarding the God of Wisdom himself. In the PV Teyvat chapter review, they did talk a little bit about the God of Wisdom. Basically, the original sentence they stated was that the God of Wisdom's enemy is wisdom itself, and the oasis of knowledge is a mirage in the desert of ignorance. In the city of scholars, there is a push for folly, yet the God of Wisdom makes no argument against it. From this, we can draw quite a few pieces of good information from it, and I'll also use a little bit of lore to explain this. However, it won't go very lore heavy into this video. So let's start sentence by sentence. The God of Wisdom, the enemy of the God of Wisdom is wisdom itself. This can be explained with relation to the current situation in Teyvat. Now, of course, this is again one of my many evil theories where I assume that Celestia is actually evil. Basically, in this case, Celestia knows the truth about this world, and on top of that, the 7 Archon that works under Celestia also knows the truth. However, as the Archon of Wisdom, it might be best interest of this Archon to protect the people from discovering the truth, because after they discover the truth, they might need to be kept away or imprisoned in the case like Vanessa. So in that case, then other people can not know about the truth. So in this case, the Dendroarcon might actually be leading his people away from the truth in order to sort of help them to still be part of this world, if that makes sense. And this is why the God of Wisdom is the enemy of wisdom itself. Basically, it means that what he is doing is basically against the idea of wisdom. However, he has to do it because there is someone above him. The second part of the first sentence can be explained in a similar way. The oasis of knowledge is a mirage in the desert of ignorance. Basically, because the current setup for this world, which is based off actual mythology, it is based off Gnosticism, if you want to go look into that in detail, which is Genshin's idea behind the entire mythology. However, basically the point here is that they will never be able, the scholars will never be able to reach the oasis of knowledge because the God of Wisdom is actually leading them away from the oasis of knowledge. However, as a result, it is considered to be the oasis of knowledge, but in reality it is a mirage in the desert of ignorance because the knowledge can never be really achieved because they're heading down the wrong path. Another way to interpret this is that the cost of knowledge. Now, one person to look into for Sumeru that we know very well is actually Lisa. She studied 2 years in Sumeru and was considered one of the most talented students in Sumeru. However, the reason Lisa is always lazy and trying to save time and do efficient work so she doesn't have to work is basically because she has learned the cost of pursuing the real knowledge. In Genshin, it is considered that the cost of pursuing knowledge is basically madness. This is essentially why under all the scrolls dropped by Summatrolls, you can read them one by one. The overall idea is that in the old world where gnosis and visions are not the thing, the cost of the ability to wield elemental vision without the use of a vision basically is to go mad. Now, the text is right there. Anyone can learn it, but anyone who has learned it have gone mad. But anyone who hasn't learned it also have gained the ability to use elemental powers. So that was considered that. Basically, this is also why here the oasis of knowledge is a mirage in the desert of ignorance. Basically, meaning that if you have gained the knowledge, but you have already gone mad at that point. So what is it really? The second sentence gives us some really good piece of information. In the city of scholars. So this one means that essentially Sumeru is the city of scholars. So I'll go a little more into detail as the next topic. But for this one, let's finish up the sentence here. There is a push for folly, basically that everyone's trying to be ignorant because some people might have realized that the idea behind the truth is fallen into madness, yet the God of Wisdom makes no argument against it because the Dendroarcon knows better than anyone the current situation, so he is not really saying anything about it. It's similar to Venti's situation, I believe. Now, moving on to the city of scholars. One place we have to mention in Sumeru is, of course, the academia. As I've said before, Lisa has studied there for 2 years. The Crimson Witch of Flames have also studied there for quite some time. And on top of that, even Fatui harbingers like Dr. Ray, the Doctor, has been originally studying there before he got kicked out. You can look into the Doctor's Traveling Feather if you're interested from the Pale Flame set that talks a little bit more about him there. Now, the academia is basically the only university in Teyvat, if that makes sense, but instead of actually like a university where you go to school, it is more considered like a higher research institute, if that makes sense. So basically in Teyvat, you just skip university, you go directly into master's degree or some sort of research institute where you're having to write research papers and all sorts of that basic thing goes on, and in the end you get I don't even know if they issue a formal certificate or anything, but basically this is Teyvat's only basically formal research institute where like 99% of all people who wants to become famous researchers or scholars come in to study here. Which also makes sense because, I mean, again, the God of Wisdom is the Dendroarcon himself. Now, before I end this video, I just want to really quickly touch on why Lisa left the academia and basically why Lisa left the academia. Lisa has been studied there for 2 years and she has basically achieved very high rankings in there, not as an official, but like in terms of scholar levels. She has been considered very advanced scholars in there, and the reason she left this was because she grew tired of this sort of living where you basically wake up, do research, and then go to bed. She was very tired of this. Basically, she believes that she should live her life out more fully instead of, you know, just focusing everything on research, and also that she has learned the truth that the idea of achieving true knowledge in the end is to go mad, and this basically sort of shows in the Sumeru. Basically, in the lore-wise, there are some scholars in Sumeru are considered somewhat like very sort of not good looking in a sense, because they have been researching day and night up to the point where they're basically having sandbags dropping down their eyeballs and things like that. Essentially, Lisa grew tired of this sort of lifestyle and she wanted to switch. So instead, she just quit off her positions there. She went back to Mondstadt and also quit off her position there and just ended up being the librarian. She can do a better job, of course, but that's all she does. That's all she wants to do at this point. It's essentially how some geniuses step down from their job and just want to work as ordinary people. That was kind of what Lisa was doing. So that's all we know so far about Sumeru. It is a city with both forests and deserts. It is the Dendro nation. The Archon is the Archon of Wisdom, and it has the biggest university, basically the only university in Tibet, to summarize it up. That's what I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, please consider subscribing. Thank you and have a nice day.